अविघ्नमस्तु गजाननं भूतगणातिसेवितं कवित्तजम्बूफलसारभक्षितम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारणं नमामि विघ्नेश्वरपादपङ्कजम् अगजाननपद्मार्कं गजाननमहर्निशम् अनेकदन्तं भक्तानाम् एकदन्तं उपास्महे वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषये भवरोहिणा निधये सर्वविद्यानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा पद्मपत्रविशालाक्षी पद्मकेसरवर्णिनी नित्यं पद्मालये देवी सा मां पातु सरस्वती या कुन्देन्दुशालहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा पूजिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा
Thank you very much. That's a very nice invocation. Now I want to introduce Sri Dandapani Acharya, a brief introduction to him before we get started. Sri Dandapani Acharya was born in Sri Lanka. He was raised in Australia and he's got a variety of life experiences. He was under monks' vows in the Hawaii Shaiva Ashram for 10 years. After that period is over, now he's teaching about Hinduism in various different settings, even in corporate settings. So in a variety of settings he's teaching Hinduism. So we are delighted to have him. As I said before, a part of this Dharma Education Center as we embark on his new journey. We are delighted to have a new perspective from Acharya who resonates with the next generation people. So let's formally give him a welcome to this. I request the Acharya to give the presentation of the talk. Thank you.
गणपतिहुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमस्त्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्वधानशृण्वन् भूरिभिस्सीदसादनम् ॐ श्रीमहागणपतये नमः। ॐ गुरुब्रह्मा गुरुविष्णु Vishnu Gurudevo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Visaje Vavarohinam Nidaye Sarvavidyanam Dakshinamutaye Namaha. Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you so much for inviting me here. Like I said, this is the first Hindu temple to invite me and to speak, so I'm very, very honored to be here. I love my culture, I love my tradition, especially love my religion, which is the world's greatest religion, I feel. It's timeless, it's been around forever, and it's filled with practical teachings and tools that really, when understood, can bring about such amazing transformation into our lives. And you know, I heard that this temple has been here for 30 years, and it is a heroic effort to create a temple in the West, to come here from the East, to gather together so many different cultures from so many different parts of India and Sri Lanka, and different ideas, different beliefs, to come to a common understanding and agreement and get over so many misunderstandings along the way and differences, and find a common ground to create a temple. And a temple as beautiful as this is a great accomplishment, so good for all of you for doing that. And then the natural next step is, like Swami Dayananda said, is to educate, right? And the next question after that is, how do we educate? Creating an education center is one thing. And I was saying to one of the gentlemen earlier that a library is great. A library is a beautiful thing, but a library is absolutely useless if you don't know what to do with the knowledge. Right? I don't know what I don't know. So if I go into the library and I pull out a book and I read the knowledge, it sounds fascinating and it resonates with my intellectual mind. It all stimulates me. But then what do I do with all this knowledge now? To have a clearly outlined process with a clearly defined goal is the key of education. So then I can take the knowledge, follow the steps that leads me to a goal. When I get to the goal, then I get to the outcome that I want. It's like cooking, right? If I give you all the spices and all the ingredients, what are you going to do? Not very much. But if I give you the steps to follow, then you can get the curry that you want, and you can eat it and enjoy it. So the steps, having the process and having a clearly defined goal is very, very important in educating. And Hinduism has outlined all of this thousands of years ago in the Vedas. We just need to be able to share that. So if you create an education center thinking that this will help the youth, I can guarantee you it will not help the youth. It's not going to be relevant at all. They're going to come, they're going to be fascinated, they're going to be intellectually stimulated by all the things they hear, and then they're going to go, it's totally useless. What am I going to do with this? Because there are no steps. So everything that you teach needs to have a process and a clearly defined goal. Because then if they follow the process, they get to the goal, they go like, oh wow, I can get what I want out of this, and then they'll keep coming back. So this is really, really important, right? And it's part of something that we really need to think of, how can we bring Hinduism in this practical way back. It's there, it's already outlined in the Vedas. We don't need to invent the wheel. We just need to convey it in a way that children can understand and be able to discriminate what's in the Vedas and what's in the Puranas, which are more mythological stories that are really not relevant in today's time anymore. So one of the things I'm going to talk about today is two things. I want to share with you a little bit about Hinduism, the timeline of Hinduism and how it's changed over the last 10,000, 12,000 years, and also some of the core beliefs of Hinduism as well. We'll look at that so we can set a clear foundation and recalibrate ourselves to what was there originally. Like the Acharyas were saying, we need to go back to the source, which are the Vedas. And then I'll share with you a couple of tools today on the practicality of Hinduism. So one of the things I want to share with you today is how Hinduism teaches us to concentrate. How many of you here struggle to concentrate? Okay, a few people. Wonderful, right? So this would be relevant, wouldn't it? So one of the things that Hinduism teaches us is how to concentrate, a very practical way to concentrate. We have people now, everyone says, I'm so distracted. Yeah, of course, you practice distraction, that's what you're good at. So you can use Hinduism to help you concentrate, which you can then apply in your relationships, in your work, in school, in sports, and pretty much everything that you do. So those are the two things I'm going to cover. Since, like Swami Vivekananda said, subject is vast, time is short, I better get going. I was very fortunate to study with this gentleman, my guru. His name is Subramanya Swami. He was born in America in 1927, and he formed the Hindu monastery in Kauai, in the island of Hawaii. They published a magazine, Hinduism Today. Some of you might have heard about it. Gurudeva was very influential and helped start many temples around the world. I had wanted to become a monk since I was about 4 years old, and ever since then I was very keen to find a teacher. And I met many wonderful swamis and gurus and acharyas, and they all said inspiring and motivational things. And I'd come and listen to their lectures. I would sit where you were sitting and I'd listen to them. I'd tell myself I'm going to do everything they said because I was so inspired by what I heard. I went home, I did everything they told me for about 4 or 5 days, and then all the inspiration went away and I just defaulted back to who I was. And then at one point I said to myself, I don't want to be inspired anymore and I don't want to be motivated. Just give me steps I can follow. Right? Give me practical steps I can follow that gets to a goal, because then I can repeat it. Inspiration and motivation doesn't last. And that's how you sell something to somebody. You get them all emotionally excited and then they buy unemotionally. Education doesn't work that way, and when I met Gurudeva, he had very practical steps that he shared from Vedic and Agamic teachings that I could apply in my life, and I could create sustainable changes. And that was what was eluding me. I couldn't sustain the changes I want. I could change for a week, I could change for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, but I couldn't sustain it week after week, month after month, year after year, and that was the toughest thing in my life. And it wasn't until I could actually met him and find practical ways of applying this in my life that now I can actually sustain the changes that I want. So when I graduated from engineering school in Australia, I moved to Hawaii and I joined his monastery. It was a traditional Saivite monastery. There were about 27 monks that lived there. We led celibate lives. We had no contact with our family and friends. We lived in little huts. We worked on Macs during the day, and we produced our magazines and we put our teachings online. And we learned pujas, we learned how to do havans, and we learned all the traditions of Hinduism as well. And then about 9 years ago, my vows expired and I decided not to renew them. So instead of going back to Australia, I moved from Hawaii to the mainland US. And I'm no longer a monk anymore. I am a priest. This is the traditional outfit of a Hindu priest. And as you know, in Hinduism, priests fall under the category of grihastas, right? And it's very different than the Catholics, right? Catholics, the priests and monks live celibate lives. And they either live alone or in cloisters with other monks and priests. In Hinduism, priests are not monks, they are grihastas, they're family people. They can get married, they can work, they can earn a lot of money, they can earn no money, they can have children, they can do whatever they want to do. They're regular people. So I live in New York City with my wonderful wife, Tatiana, who's here with me, and we both live there. And I speak for a living. I speak primarily to entrepreneurs and business owners around the world and to different companies. Quite often on the topic of developing focus and personal development. And my wife and I are building an ashram in Costa Rica. We call it Siva Ashram, and we have 16.5 acres of land where we're creating a beautiful botanical garden, and we will create an ashram and a small Shiva temple. And the whole purpose of it is to promote and preserve Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, but to put it in a way that it's practical and relevant to adults and children, where it can actually be applied in their life to create changes. And we hope one day it will be a place of pilgrimage. It's a beautiful land surrounded by mountains and rivers and a beach very close by. And the idea is for people to come there and learn about Hinduism and experience Hinduism in a way where they can take back and apply it in their life and create the lives that they want to. And that's our goal. So that brings us to where we are today. That's a little bit about me and my wife and what we're doing and our mission in our life. So I want to talk about the Hindu timeline, right? So let's start by understanding, Hinduism obviously is timeless. There's no founder. About 10,000 BC, minus BC, before Christ, the Vedic culture was primarily in the Himalayan region, right? And then the early Vedic period began about minus 7,000 BC. And this is a very rough overview of Hinduism. I can show you where to go for a more detailed timeline of Hinduism. The late Vedic period started to end around minus 1,900 BC. And this is where the Vedas and Agamas, which are the core scriptures of Hinduism, really flourished during this period, about minus 2000 BC and before. And then after that, between minus 1300 BC and 400 CE, which is the Common Era, and then almost 2000 year period, 1700 year period, is when the Puranas were composed, right? Written, elaborated, and then promoted, right? These are folk narratives, they're Hindu mythology. They are stories created by monks and priests like myself to convey the Vedic teachings, right? To convey the Vedas and the Agamas. And the simple way to put it is that the Vedas teach that Hinduism's monotheistic, right? Hinduism has one God. That God, in its ultimate form, is timeless, formless, and spaceless. So now me as a priest wandering around in India 4,000 years ago, I come upon a village and I sit around the fireplace because there was no auditorium, and I'm talking to the villagers and I tell everyone that God is timeless, formless, and spaceless. They look at me and go, what's he smoking? Right? What do you mean God is timeless, formless, and spaceless? Everything in our life has form. So then I said, God is man. Oh, and the villager goes, now I understand. Because most people were literal. Now if I have a man, what do I need? A woman, right? So now then I come up with a woman. So there's man God and a woman God. And when you have man God and woman God, what happens next? You have baby gods, right? So I tell my story and everybody, and I try and educate through story, and then I wander around and go to the next village, and then 2 years later I come back. Can I tell the same story again? No, because every show on Netflix to season 2 has more characters, right? I can't tell the same story, so now I add a few more characters. There's a bad god that came to kidnap the baby god and took it away, and then this god got really upset, and then he went to fight with that god. And then that god kidnapped this god's wife. Oh my God. Then there was a war that went on for about 20,000 years where 5 million armies were fighting each other. And that formed the Puranas. For 2,000 years, the Puranic stories grew and grew and grew. They were folk narratives. They're mythology. They're the Marvel comics of Hinduism. They really are, right? And today, modern day Hinduism in 2017 is Puranic based, not Vedic based, right? Most people relate to Hinduism based on the Puranas and not the Vedas and the Agamas, which are the core scriptures of Hinduism. And this is problematic, right? This is one of the core reasons why today's youth are turning to Hinduism, because it's mythology and folk narratives that's not relevant in their life. They cannot apply those stories in their life in a way that they can create the change that they want to create. So let's look at the core beliefs of Hinduism, right? What are they? And keep it really simple. So Hinduism believes in one God, right? Hinduism is monotheistic. It is not polytheistic, right? We believe in one God, and then we believe in devas, mahadevas. What's a deva? A deva is an angel. A mahadeva is a great angel. Maha means great, deva means angel. So mahadeva is a great angel. Hinduism believes in the three worlds. I hope you can see it and it's not too small, the font. And if you can't, please come forward. There's many seats in front. It's always interesting. In my talks, nobody wants to sit in front. But when you go to a Sting or Prince concert, everybody's sitting in front. I don't know why. Right? So Hinduism believes in the devas and mahadevas and the three worlds. What are the three worlds? The first world is the physical world, where we live right now, right? The second world is called the astral world, right? It's a world that exists right here. It's not a planet far away. It's a world that exists right here, but it's outside our visual spectrum. If we can see between 20 kilohertz and 40 kilohertz, and I don't know what the frequencies are, I'm just making up some numbers, but if we can see between a certain spectrum, the astral world exists outside of that. It's where you go when you sleep, and it's also where you go when you die. And in this astral world, the devas, angels exist, people who died live there, people who sleep are functioning there. They're waiting to be reincarnated. Right? That's the second world. The third world is an even more refined frequency that still exists right here, but it's just really outside of our visual spectrum, but we can tap into during deep pujas and deep meditations. Right? This is where the Mahadevas live. Who's a Mahadeva in Hinduism? Ganesha is a Mahadeva, Kartikeya is a Mahadeva, Hanuman is a Mahadeva. Great angels, they function in the deeper causal world, which is called the third world, the causal world, right? That's where they live and they function. Ganesha is not a god. The problem started, I believe, and this is my opinion, that a few hundred years ago, Europeans pulled up on the shores of India, right? Came on land and they saw all these Hindus worshipping all these statues, and they said, oh, they have many gods. So they went around and told the whole world Hindus have many gods. But in Sanskrit, we actually have words for angels and great angels. They're devas and mahadevas. So I think this is an error that has been carried forward for hundreds of years. We are monotheistic, we have one God, but we have many angels and great angels, and that's the core belief of Hinduism, right? Hindus believe in karma, the law of cause and effect, right? That every thought, word, and deed has a repercussion. There's two sides to karma. One is action, which is what most people are familiar with. The other part of karma is reaction. Very, very important part that most people don't talk about. How I react to something also determines my future. So Mr. Vasa says to me, hey, Dandapani, your shawl is ugly. I have two choices to react. I can pinch him, or I can say, what a great opportunity to go shopping. Right? How I respond determines my future, right? If I hit him, I might get arrested, he might press charges against me. If I say, hey, it's a great opportunity to go shopping, I can go buy a few more shops. So karma is twofold, how we act and how we react. That's another core belief of Hinduism, and that's only a very surface level of karma, right? Hindus believe in reincarnation. We live in a physical body. When the physical body dies and the silver cord that ties our physical body to our astral body breaks, the astral body now continues to function in what's called the astral world, the second world, till it's time to reincarnate again into a male or female body. That soul continues to function and reincarnate over and over again till moksha is attained. Is moksha the end of the path? It's not. Moksha only means that you no longer reincarnate into the physical world. You graduate from the physical world and you go into the second world, the astral world, where you continue to grow and evolve. You move from the astral world, the second world, into the third world, which is a much more refined frequency, till you finally attain Vishvagrasa, final merger with God. Right? And that's the end of a soul's evolution in the Hindu spiritual teachings. Right? So moksha is actually not the end, but Vishvagrasa actually is. So Hindus believe in that. Another core belief of Hinduism is ahimsa, right? Non-violence. Non-violence in thought, word, and deed. And this is a core belief of Hinduism. We believe that God is all-pervasive. God is inside of me, inside of you, the trees, the stones, everything. Right? And because of that, we don't hurt anything or anyone, and that's a core belief of Hinduism. Now, if you took this core beliefs, right, and you applied it to everything that you hear about Hinduism today, you'll find that most of the things you hear about Hinduism today contradicts these core beliefs. Why do they contradict these core beliefs? Because they come from the Puranas. And the Puranas are these man-made stories, mythology, that contradict the core beliefs of Hinduism. I'll give you a classic example, right? You all know the story of how Ganesha got his head. Paraji, can you give me a quick 30-second summary of that story? Yeah, please. Yeah. Yeah, sure, please. Yeah.
So we know it as the Parvati was Parvati's son is Ganesha.
Yeah. Okay.
Ganesha comes to Parvati, and Ganesha is going inside.
Yeah.
And pretty soon, because the head gets checked out,
Yeah.
Parvati's completely weak, and she doesn't know bring that and of course, they can do this thing, and we're used to that. If an elephant comes in, it gets told, spiritual.
And that's the story behind Ganesha's head, right? Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Is that about right?
That's about right. That's the common story. 99% of the people tell that story, right? Parvati is bathing, Shiva comes to see Parvati, the boy doesn't let him in, right? So they argue, they have a big fight. He takes some machete or some knife, cuts the boy's head off. Parvati comes out and goes, oh my God, what have you done? Right, this is our son. He says, I didn't know that's our son. Wait a minute, how do you know that's not your son? The only way a man doesn't know that's his son is he's been sleeping around. Has Shiva been sleeping around? Can we assume that? So then Shiva's mortified. Parvati is mortified. So they go to the jungle finds the first animal they come across, cut that animal's head off, and brings it and puts it on the boy's head. Now, what is that contradicting in Hinduism? Which of the core beliefs is it contradicting? Ahimsa. Do we need more violence in the world? Right? Do we need that? Can you think, who here in this, how many of you in this room have children? How many of you would take a machete and chop a kid's head off? Would you? What would that child need to do to you in order for you to be so upset that you would chop that head off with a machete? No, seriously. What would you need? What a story to promote about Hinduism. Hinduism is a religion of love, of tolerance, of patience, of non-violence. Yet we teach this to our children. Right? We teach that Hinduism is violent. Pick up any Amar Chitra comic book and flip through the pages. Every page has blood on it. Gods fighting with each other, filled with violence, riddled with violence. Yet the core teaching of Hinduism is ahimsa. We have one God that's all pervasive. This God is kind, is loving, is compassionate, is tolerant. Yet all the gods ever do is fight. Every story is fight, filled with violence. Now, fast forward to 2017. Why will a young 30-year-old smart Silicon Valley techie American Hindu kid pick up this book and go, wow, this is so relevant to me? Right? Tomorrow when my software crashes, I'm going to take a machete and cut a boy's head off and feel better about myself. He reads it and he goes, this is not relevant to me. Hinduism is an old archaic religion that's just filled with stories of gods that are really upset with one another and in constant battle and fighting. So who needs the religion? I don't need the religion. I come to temple, the priest is chanting something for 2 hours, and today they're chanting the Sahasranam. What is that? 1,008 names. My God, what number are we at now? 100? Oh my God, 908 left to go. How long is this going to be? Right? They have no idea, no relevance, so they just go away from Hinduism. It's totally irrelevant to them. I grew up in Australia feeling the same way too, until I learned about my religion and learned about the Vedas and Agamas, and I realized how practical and relevant they were. Right? And most Hindus today believe the Puranas. Mythological stories, right? Folk narratives that monks and priests like myself created a few thousand years ago to try and convey deeper concepts about the Vedas. Maybe they were relevant 3,500 years ago, but they're no longer relevant today, and it's not something we should be very discriminating in what we promote about Hinduism. Always take everything you hear, reference the core beliefs of Hinduism and say, do they contradict this? Right? If the story has violence in it, then don't teach it. We don't need to teach people violence. There's enough violence. You want violence, just turn on the news. Right? You don't need to read more violence within Hinduism. Right? So these are the core beliefs of Hinduism. Hinduism has 4 sects. Right? Saivism is one sect. Shaktism is another sect of Hinduism. Vaishnavism is the 3rd sect. And then Smartism is the 4th sect. All 4 of these sects make up Hinduism. Right? They all share the common beliefs of Hinduism. They all agree on one God. They all agree on karma and reincarnation. They all agree on ahimsa, non-violence. But they differ in what happens to the soul at the end of that soul's evolution. Right? So for example, in Saivism and Shaktism, the soul evolves over many lifetimes in reincarnation, attains moksha, keeps evolving in the inner worlds. And then in Saivism and Shaktism, they say the soul merges with God at the end. Right? The soul loses its identity. It's almost like taking a drop of water and putting it in the ocean, and soul and God becomes one. In Vaishnavism, it's a little different. At the end of the evolution, the soul becomes one with Vishnu, but the soul maintains its identity. It does not lose its identity. So there is a separation. Right? That's the belief in Vaishnavism. So though the different sects in Hinduism share common beliefs, they do share some very clear, distinct differences in what happens to the soul at the end of its evolution. And this is very important, right? Why? Because let's look at the overview journey of one's spiritual development, right? The first thing we need to do is figure out what our philosophy is. What philosophy do we subscribe to? Is it Saivism, Shaktism, Vaishnavism, Smartism? Not one is better than the other, and not one is right or wrong. But it's important for you to decide what works for you, right? The philosophy defines the goal. So I'm a Saivite. I believe in the concept that the soul will merge at the end with God, right? So that's something you don't agree with or you feel is not right, then Shaivism is not for you. Maybe you're a Vaishnavite, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but you need to know what the end goal is, right? Clearly defining your goal is such an important thing in your spiritual unfoldment. There needs to be a path and there needs to be a goal. What does the goal do? The goal defines the path. Right? If I have a destination, then I know the path to get there. If I said to all of you, I want to go to New York City, I want to walk to New York City, what direction would you tell me to walk? North, east, south, west? North, right? That's the path to get there, right? Then the path defines the lifestyle, the practices and the guidelines that did you have a question?
Yeah, I don't know really Smartism.
Smartism is something that Adi Shankara put together when Hinduism was really going through a very difficult time during that time, where there was a lot of influences from Jainism and Buddhism. He kind of reorganized Hinduism into different categories, and he put together Smartism. Smartism is a very intellectual path, and they don't give a lot of relevance to rituals and pujas, but they also allow you to pick your deity. So they have a 6-deity system. They have Shiva and Vishnu and Parvati and Ganesha and Muruga, and they have and then you can pick whichever deity you want to worship. And I can share more about that later too, but that's primarily what Smartism is. Whereas Saivism, we pray to Shiva, and Shaktism, we might pick Parvati, and either the form of Parvati or Raja Rajeswari, or whatever it is. In Vaishnavism, it's Vishnu, right, or one of his incarnation. Smartism is kind of more, it's like a Hindu buffet, and you just pick one of the deities that you want to relate to. But those are the 4 primary sects of Hinduism. So the path then defines the lifestyle, right? And this is very important to teach in Hinduism, right? First of all, the question is, what is the philosophy that you subscribe to in Hinduism? Right? Your philosophy defines your goal. Because once you know the goal, you know the path and what you need to do. What type of practices you need to learn, what kind of teachings you need to learn, what kind of meditation practice you need to do. But unless you know the goal, it's very, very hard to know the path to get there and how to live the lifestyle that you want. Everything in our life has a clearly defined goal and a path to get there. Right? If you look at all the mundane things in our life that we do, taking a shower, for example. First step, you go to the bathroom, you take your clothes off, you turn the water on, you make sure it's the right temperature, you get wet, you put soap on, you wash the soap off, you dry yourself, you put clothes on, and you leave the bathroom, right? That's maybe about 8 or 9 steps. Do you ever mix those steps up? Just for the fun of it. You know, they say variety is the spice of life. Why don't we try something different today? Why don't we start showering with our clothes on, and then put soap on our clothes, and take our clothes off, put our fresh clothes on, keep pouring water on us, then dry ourselves off and leave the bathroom. We don't, right? We follow a very methodical step-by-step process because it gets to a clearly defined goal. What is the goal? The goal is to feel clean, right, and have fresh clothes on. We don't mix that. I assume you've been having a shower every day for the last 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years. And you follow the same step because it gets you to the goal. Right? You put your shoes on. You put your socks on first, you put your shoes on, and then you tie your laces. 3 steps. Do you ever mix those steps up? No. Cooking is the same way. You put the wok on the stove, you turn the fire on, you put the oil in, you put the spices, and then you add all the little ingredients, and you cook, and then you turn it off. You take the food out of the wok, and then you serve it. Do you ever mix those steps? You don't. Having knowledge alone is not enough, right? There needs to be a systematic process that gets to a goal, and unless you can show people the steps, they're not going to repeat it. You teach your children how to have a shower. You teach them the steps, and then they keep doing this. Your parents taught you how to bathe, and ever since they taught you, haven't mixed it up. Why not? Because it makes sense to follow those steps to get you to the goal, right? So it's really important in Hinduism as we teach Hinduism, that we clearly outline the path to get to the goal. The goal can be different based on what it is you want, right? So the different sects of Hinduism outline the different goals based on the philosophy. And once people understand what the goals are, they find one that's relevant to them, that they are in agreement with. Some people might say, yes, my goal is to be a Vaishnava and I worship Krishna. At the end of the day, we will not merge, but we will remain separate. And that's relevant to him or her, and that's totally fine. Whereas another person that's a Shaivite might say the soul merges with God and I lose my identity completely. And that might be his path. And then based on his goal, you can outline for him a clear path and practices for him to do to clearly get to that goal. Does that make sense? So these steps are really, really important, right? So I picked the path of Saivism. That was my choice, right? So when I'm picking the path of Saivism, my first thing is I pick a philosophy. So within Saivism, there are 6 main philosophies, right? Different schools of thoughts. I picked Saiva Siddhanta, monistic theism, or in Sanskrit they call Advaita Ishvaravada, right? I picked the Saiva Siddhanta philosophy. That's the one that most resonated with me, right? So now that I picked the philosophy, what's the next step? Defining the goal, right? The philosophy defines the goal. What is the goal? Self-realization. That's the goal in Saivism. I'm only using this as an example. I'm not telling you that this is the path you need to follow, right? Saivism teaches that the goal in life is self-realization, nirvikalpa samadhi, where the soul finally, awareness merges into itself and you become one with God, right? What is the path? The path is Raja Yoga. It has already been outlined. It's an 8-fold classical step to get to self-realization. What is the lifestyle? Okay, how do I live a lifestyle that keeps me on the path to get me to my goal? The lifestyle are the yamas and niyamas, right? The codes of conduct of how I live my life in order to stay the path to get to the goal. So if I want to win the Wimbledon, right, I need to find a path to get there, getting trained and all these things. Then I need to figure out a lifestyle. What are my guidelines and practices? If I want to win the Wimbledon, does it make sense to wake up in the morning to have a pizza and have a burger for lunch and spend 5 hours in the evening sitting on the couch watching TV? Will I get to the Wimbledon? No, right? There needs to be a lifestyle that supports me to stay on the path to get to my goal. So let's look at the goal, right? Self-realization in the Saivite path, right? My guru said to me a long time ago, the easiest way to realize the self is to realize that God Siva is the same energy in me and the same energy in you, right? The energy that's in God is the same energy in me and the same energy in you. And once you can realize that, you can experience God inside of you, right? I say to people, meditation is having a meeting with your energy. All day long, we all have energy inside of us. All day long, energy is flowing out of us to people and things around us. The ability to pull that energy back, concentrate it within us, and experience that energy is the experience of having that realization of God inside of you. So meditation is having a daily meeting with your energy. We have meetings all day long. When you go to work, you gather all the employees together and you have a meeting with them, right? Sports teams have meetings on the side of the field. So meditation in Hinduism is having a meeting with your energy, and that energy is gone, right? What is the path of Raja Yoga, the 8-fold path? 1 is yamas, then it's niyamas, the asana, and I'll explain what these are: pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Right? These are the 8 steps in Raja Yoga that's been outlined to get to the clearly defined goal, which is self-realization, enlightenment. The first 4 steps are external. The second 4 steps are internal, because the Saiva Siddhanta philosophy teaches that life is 50% external, 50% internal. Your life is 50% external. You have family and children and work and community around with you that you deal. And then 50% of your life is internal. All the things that go on inside your head that only you know about. All your joy and your sadness and your happiness and your misery and your everything that goes on inside of you, that's the 50% internal. The philosophy teaches you how to work with the external and how to work with the internal, right? So the yamas are guidelines and the niyamas are practices, right? They're Hinduism's most advanced system of energy management, right? It is an amazingly well thought through system of managing energy. The yamas teaches us how to prevent the loss of energy. And the niyamas teach us how to increase our energy. Why? Because to realize the self, I need to realize that the energy inside of me is the same energy as the energy inside of God. Right? So the first step in doing that is I need to accumulate energy. I need to prevent energy from going outside of me, from losing energy. The same way if I'm building a company, the first thing I want to do is prevent the loss of money. Right? I create budgets, I create purchase orders to prevent the loss of money. Then I want to build capital. The more capital I have, I can invest back into my business and grow my business. Life is the same way. Hinduism teaches you the first thing you want to do is prevent the loss of energy. So they've come up with the Yamas 10 steps that outline the loss of energy. One of the steps says, do not steal. So now most people hear that and they go like, well, it's just telling you, do good things, stealing is bad. Yeah, stealing is bad, but that's not really it. It's actually much more advanced than that. Why do not steal? Do not steal because stealing causes you a lot of loss of energy. What does that mean? Okay, I'll give you an example. Maybe I'm walking around afterwards and I see a really nice puja lamp and I go like, wow, that puja lamp looks really beautiful. Would look really nice in my shrine room. So I stick it under my veshti and I take it home with me. So I stole the lamp from the temple, all right? So as I go away, I think to myself, nobody noticed, I got away with it. Then I think to myself, oh no, the temple maybe has some security cameras. What if somebody found out? What if Mr. Basu at the end of the week is looking at the security camera and he sees Dandapani stealing the temple lamp? Now I start to worry about this, right? And I'm thinking about it all day, and all this worry is consuming what? It's consuming energy. So how do I not consume energy? Don't steal, right? The goal in life is to accumulate as much energy as possible, channel that energy down a path to your clearly defined goal. Your life is a manifestation of where you invest your energy. Right? Energy is like water. If I take a watering can and I water the garden bed, would the weeds grow or the flowers grow? Which would grow? Both, right? Water doesn't know how to discriminate between the weeds and the flowers. Whatever I put energy into will start to manifest in my life. If I put energy into something positive, it will grow and become more positive. If I put energy into something negative, it will grow and become more negative. Energy has no ability to discriminate between positive and negative. You want something to manifest in your life, the first step is you need to prevent the loss of energy. Then you need to accumulate energy, grow as much energy as possible. You need to channel it down a very clear path to a clearly defined goal in order to manifest that in your life. The yamas and niyamas teach you guidelines on how to prevent the loss of energy, and then it teaches you practices on how to accumulate energy, how to build more energy. By doing yoga, by right breathing, by right eating. We have a beautiful teachings of Ayurveda in Hinduism, right? That teaches you how to eat properly. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy a veggie burger every now and then, or a pizza, or a beer, or a glass of wine. It's totally fine, right? But to eat a hamburger every day, or to eat pizza every day, may not be that healthy. But if you have the beautiful teachings of Ayurveda that teaches you how to eat properly, so Hinduism's filled with practices. When you live them, you can help you accumulate more energy. Now you have a lot of energy, you can channel it down the path to your goal to manifest what you want in your life, right? That's what the yamas and niyamas teach. Right? So then I have the yamas, which are my guidelines. Then I have the niyamas, which are my practices, right? To harness energy. So now, after living the first two steps, I have accumulated a lot of energy. Now what do I do? So if you have a town, and that town starts to grow with more and more people, right? It grows from a population of 10,000 to 300,000. What's one of the first things that the council needs to do, or the city needs to do? Build better roads, right? Because there'll be more people going on the road, so you need to build better roads, wider roads, so the cars can flow nicely through it. That's where the third step comes in, which is asana, which the West calls yoga. It's not really the right term for the practice. The real term is asana, right? Why do you do asana? You do asana to stretch your nervous system so energy can flow through it nicely. When you sleep at night for 7 hours and you sleep like this, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that you do? One of the first things. You stretch, right? How does it feel? It feels good. When you stretch, you actually stretch your nervous system. And when you stretch the nervous system, energy is flowing nicely through it. And that's why when you stretch, it feels really good because energy is flowing nicely through it. So the first 2 steps on the Raja Yoga path is to accumulate energy, prevent the loss of energy, and then accumulate energy. Then you do yoga or asana so that energy can flow nicely through your nervous system. So now energy is flowing really nicely and it can flow out of you to people and things around you. So when you build beautiful roads and cars are going through it very quickly, what's the next step do? You build traffic lights, speed bumps, roundabouts. Why? To slow the traffic down, right? So people don't speed too much. That's where the 4th step comes in, pranayama, restraining life force. Now you have so much energy inside of yourself. You have a nervous system that's built really well because you're doing your asana practice every day. Now energy is flowing out of you to people and things around you. No, you don't want that. You want to be able to stop and restrain that energy from going out. So that's where pranayama comes from. Pranayama is the practice of breath control that helps to maintain energy. Hinduism teaches you how to work with your breath, which is so important. Acharya said that earlier too. Breath is life. Another thing Hinduism teaches you to control your life force is also how to work with your sexual energies, right? How to channel them, how to transmute your sexual energy, something that we don't ever talk in our community about, right? Because it's something that we feel uncomfortable, especially in our culture. But what are Hindus good at doing? We're good at having children. We have 1 billion people on this planet. Yet nobody wants to talk about it. We don't have any proper education on sexuality. Yet the Vedas and Agamas teach you how to deal with your sexual forces, how to channel them, how to transmute them, to do creative things in the world, to manifest things in the world. It's not a taboo topic, right? It is part of life. Education and all of this is so important in today's world, right? If we can give the right knowledge to our children, our teenagers about sexuality and understanding those sexual forces, they can use those energies creatively to manifest what they want in their life. How else do you control your energy? By controlling your speech. Hinduism teaches you so many different techniques and tools on pranayama, on restraining life force. So once you restrain the life force, what's the next step? Pratyahara. You've restrained it from growing out. The next step is you need to withdraw that energy. You need to accumulate. There needs to be a central gathering place. That's why you built this auditorium. So everybody can gather in one place, which then leads to the next step, dharana, to concentrate. Right? You want everybody to come to one place, so then it's easier to teach them or talk to them. Right? That's why you build a temple. Everybody comes to one place. You can channel God's energy to one place. The next step is concentration, and then comes meditation. Once you've gathered all that energy inside of you, you meditate on that energy. When you meditate on that energy, you can experience that energy, and then comes the 8th step, which is samadhi. The English word for it is ecstasy. Experiencing that energy inside of you, experiencing divinity inside of you. So you can see Hinduism is so practical. The philosophy teaches you the goal. The philosophy of Hinduism outlines the goal for you. It outlines a few different goals. You pick the goal that you want. Once you pick the goal, Hinduism outlines a very clear, practical, systematic, step-by-step approach to getting to that goal. It's not saying, okay, our goal in life is moksha. Great. And then I go away. What am I going to do with that? Absolutely nothing. How am I going to get to moksha? I have no idea. But now I have steps. And each of those steps can be broken down into details. Now I can follow the recipe to get to the end, to what I want. And this is how we need to teach Hinduism to our children, right? Not only to our children, to all Hindus. You had a question?
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more about pratyahara? What is it, withdrawal from what?
Yes, so we have energy inside our body, right? We all have energy. You wake up in the morning, just say you had a good sleep last night and you slept for 7-8 hours. You wake up and you're full of energy. And throughout the day, you're investing energy into people and things around you, right? But most of us never evaluate who and what we're investing our energy into, right? We just spend our energy, but we only have so much energy. And energy is always flowing out of us to people and things around us. Pratyahara is a process that comes after pranayama, being mindful, being wise about who and what we invest our energy in, and then pulling that energy systematically through breath control, through our nervous system, pulling it into our spine. Once we gather all the energy into our spine, which is our center, it's our auditorium, like where we've all gathered now, into our spine, we channel through breath control the energy in our spine into our head. As the energy goes into our head, we channel it to very specific locations in our mind. So now I said energy is like water, right? I said earlier, if you water the garden bed, it grows. So now if I had 10 garden beds, right? One had broccoli and one had carrots and one had cauliflower and one had cabbage, and I only watered the carrots. Would the other garden beds grow? No, right? Only the carrots grow, whatever I put water in. So pratyahara is a process of withdrawing all that energy, right, into a central location. Concentration then is directing that energy to a very specific area of the mind that you want to cultivate. So the same way, if I go to the gym and I lift weights, what would I get? Muscle, right? You see some men walking around where they have a really big upper body and skinny legs. Have you ever noticed that? Why? Because they don't work on developing their legs. They just want to look good up front, right? Up top. So they walk around with big muscles. So this whole process, right, the process of pratyahara is a process of withdrawing that energy so we can concentrate it and directing it to developing very specific areas in our mind that we want to experience. Does that make sense? So it's a systematic process of pulling that energy back. Right? Yeah. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sixth.
Concentration.
Dharana.
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 Dharana is concentration. Sorry, it's so small. Yeah, number 6 is dharana, concentration. So after you withdraw that energy, you pull all that energy together, right? So the same way, right? You have people that come to the temple, everybody's walking around and talking, and then you say, hey, everybody come together. You pull, you withdraw everybody, and you concentrate them in the central location. Like earlier, everybody was walking outside, and you say, okay, come everybody, we're starting. That's the process of withdrawal. As your energy starts to flow out, you want to withdraw it. You want to pull it all to a central location, concentrate it, so you can meditate on it and experience it.
It's the meaning in dhyana.
Sorry?
Dhyana is also same thing.
No, it's different.
We'll have a Q&A session after this.
Yeah. So dharana is different. Dharana and dhyana are different, right? Dharana is concentrating the energy. Meditation is a prolonged state of concentration. Actually experiencing that energy comes after concentration, right? And we can go into that in a little detail. So what I'm trying to say here is that Hinduism is very, very goal-orientated and process-orientated. And this is how Hinduism is never really taught in modern day world. If you want to make an impact with the younger generation, don't just give them knowledge. You need to show them a systematic process that gets to a clearly defined goal. Because only then does Hinduism become relevant and useful in their life. And unless you do that, it's not going to be relevant or useful in their life. They cannot apply it in their life, okay? What are the signposts on the path, right? The chakras, that's something that Hinduism talks about all the time, right? What are chakras? The nerve centers within the body, right? There are 21 chakras in total. There are 7 chakras that exist from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. And then there are 7 more from the soles of the feet to the hips. And then there's 7 more that lie above the head in the inner bodies of man, right? And these are the chakra systems within Hinduism. And most people are familiar with the 7 chakras that exist from the base of the spine to the top of the head. And this is something that a lot of Hindus know about, but they don't really quite understand what they are. The chakras are actually very, very clear signposts on the path. So if I'm walking from here to New York City, because my goal is New York and I know the path to get there, it's very helpful to have signposts. What's the next state am I going to run into if I'm walking up there? Is it New Jersey? Potentially, right? So you say, hey, your signpost should say, welcome to New Jersey. If you see a signpost that says, welcome to Texas, you're walking the wrong way, right? So signposts are really important on the spiritual path, right? So we know where we're going. So Hinduism is very clear signposts, right? The 7 lower chakras at the hips region is fear and lust. Right? So if you're feeling fearful or lustful, or you know someone who's feeling fearful and lustful, that's where their consciousness is. If you keep going lower, it gets progressively worse. The next step is raging anger, which is in your thighs. And then you go one more step below to your knees, it's retaliatory jealousy, right? Getting progressively worse. You go to your calves, it's prolonged mental confusion. Even further down to your ankles, it's selfishness. And below that, you go to your feet, it's the absence of conscience. And all the way to the soles of your feet, it's murder and malice. Right? These are points in your body that relate to different areas of your mind. So if you meet somebody who's in retaliatory jealousy, okay, what does that mean? I'm so upset with someone, right? I'm really jealous about that person, and I want to really retaliate because I'm really jealous, so I go and scratch their car. I'm functioning in retaliatory jealousy. Okay? So I come to the temple for a few weeks and months after that, and I pray and I get uplifted. What is my next state of mind? If I become extremely angry afterwards, have I made progress? What?
No.
Yes, I have made progress. I've gone from jealousy to anger. You think you're not making progress, right? But you actually are. Hinduism shows you signposts. I remember living with my guru in the Adinam in his ashram, and we had a young man that came to study with us for 6 months, right? He was a very arrogant young man, very educated and arrogant young man, and he had a lot of jealousy. So my guru was helping him and guiding him, and a week later, he got really, really angry. And I said, oh my God, this is getting worse. My guru said, no, we're making progress, right? Because he got uplifted in consciousness, right? So Hinduism shows you signposts. Now let's look at the 7 upper chakras, right? So the first one, the Muladhara, is time, memory, and space. It's tied to your subconscious mind. Every experience you have in life took place at a certain time and a certain space and creates a certain memory. The next chakra above that, the Svadhisthana, is reason, it's intellect, right? The one after that is willpower. Hinduism teaches you how to cultivate willpower, right? The one after that, in your heart chakra, is not love. A lot of people and a lot of Westerners who teach yoga nowadays, yoga teachers, say the heart chakra is love. It is not love. It's a great mistake they're doing to the Hindu religion. The heart chakra is direct cognition, it's intuition. The next chakra up above in your throat is divine love. Out of intuition comes understanding, out of understanding comes empathy, out of empathy comes compassion, out of compassion comes love. That's the sequence of how it goes. And then the 6th chakra is divine sight, and then the 4th one, the 7th one is illumination or godliness, experiencing divinity within you. So if you meet someone who's very intellectual, what chakra are they functioning in? Mr. Masu, what chakra are they functioning? This is a test. If someone who's, yes, the Svadhisthana, the reason, right? And then if after talking to this intellectual person for 10 minutes, and then they start telling you about their past, have they gone up or down? They've gone down. So this is a good signpost. It's getting progressively worse, right? So now you have to be careful. Where are they going to go next? To the lower chakra, fear and lust. After fear and lust comes anger. So it's probably good for you to say, please excuse me, I need to use the restroom, and leave the conversation, right? So when I'm having a conversation with someone, I know the chakras. So I know what state of mind they're in, right? I know where they're functioning. If someone is intellectual with me, and then after that starts talking about their past, I know he's going down in consciousness, and there's a good chance he might get angry with me. But if he's intellectual and then he goes into willpower and says, I'm going to do this, we're going to build this education center, then I know he's getting higher in his consciousness and he might go into intuition. So I stay with him in the conversation, right? And I teach business people how to use the system to help them in their business life, right? To help them in their everyday life. Hinduism is so practical. It teaches you very, very clear steps on how to apply these deeper philosophies in your everyday life that can actually make a difference, right? When you actually know how to look at it. So a person needs to decide what is their philosophy, right? What is their goal? What is the path and their lifestyle? This is what we need to teach our children, right? What philosophy do you subscribe to? What is your goal in life? What is your purpose in life? Mr. Vasu talked about it, Simon Sinek, right? Talking about your why, right? Why do you want to create the education center, right? Teach Hindus to figure out their goal in life, because Hinduism talks about this. Hinduism is a goal-oriented religion. Teach the younger generation to figure out their goal in life, right? The material goal. right? The dharmic goal, artha, karma, dharma, moksha, right? This is the path, the purusharthas, the 4 goals of a householder's life. We are all householders here. Define the goal, define the path to get to the goal, and then the lifestyle. How do I live my life so I can stay on the path to get to that goal? This is the process. And unless we can take the knowledge and share it in this way, it is not going to be relevant to our younger generation. How am I doing on time? Is it time for Q&A? Yes? Okay.
We'll do a Q&A session now. So the process of inquiry will do the Q&A. So the sheets have been passed out, index cards. So those who have got a question can come up here and answer this question, ask questions. Okay.
Anybody want to
Anybody?
with a question? I can gather the cards.
Yeah, or they can come up here and ask the question either again. Does anybody have any question?
Yes, please.
What is the goal of Smartism?
What is the goal of Smartism? That's a very good question. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember off the top of my head. But I can tell you where to find that information. If you go to a website called HimalayanAcademy.com, right? HimalayanAcademy.com, it's the website for the monastery in Hawaii. There's a book called Dancing with Siva. Right? And Siva spelled S-I-V-A, not S-H-I-V-A. So go to HimalayanAcademy.com. You can download the book for free. There's a PDF called Dancing with Siva. And in there, they have very elaborately, in a very simplified way, shared details about Smartism, about all 4 sects. So you can read about Shaivism, you can read about Shaktism, you can read about Vaishnavism, and you can read about Smartism in there. And there it outlines very clearly what the goal is. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Reader of Hinduism today. I never saw Smartism mentioned.
Oh, it is in there, yeah. We must have missed that issue. Possibly.
Now, it is distinct from Advaita philosophy. It's not Advaita philosophy.
Sorry?
Is it synonymous with Advaita philosophy in Hinduism?
You know, I know.
What you say sounds similar, like opponent.
Yes, it's, you know, I've never really studied it very much. I've studied it only in a general way. What I've studied is Shaivism, so that's what I know, and I don't want to talk about something I don't know. I'm not an intellect, I'm not a professor, so I don't have a lot of information. I can only speak from my experience. I have very little knowledge about Smartism, and I'll be honest with you. So I can reference you to some place that has good knowledge, which you can read up upon, but personally I don't know, I'm sorry.
One comment I can make is when I check with somebody who am I, Shaivite or Vaishnava, because I don't know.
Yes.
The answer that I got was like when you accept both Shiva and Vishnu, and probably the reason was like there was narrow-mindedness, like the Shaivites, they don't look at Vishnu and the Vaishnava. So it's not a path, but in terms of accommodating and reducing the narrow-mindedness, that you don't just think that God is only Vishnu, don't just think God is only Shiva.
Yes.
And to avoid that kind of discrimination, probably it might have given rise to that Smartism.
Yes, for example, very good point. I think that's a very, very good insight. Yes, to get to avoid narrow-mindedness, right? And the important thing, right? Hinduism is one God, right? Monotheistic. But that one God can be called by different names. You can call that God Shiva. You can call that God Vishnu. You can call that God Parvati. So my wife, I call her honey, darling, baby, right? Her clients call her Tatiana, but I hope they don't call her darling, right? But she's called by many different things, but she's still the same one person, right? So it's really important to understand that depending on your relationship with the Supreme God is how you reference the God. So you might look at Meenakshi or Parvati and go, Amma. For you, that's the goddess, right? Whereas I might look at the Supreme God and say Shiva. So it's important to share that part of it, but it's very important to say that Hinduism is monotheistic. We don't have multiple gods. We have one God, many angels, and many great angels. And that's a very core belief of Hinduism. And the terminology is so crucial here.
Thank you very much for the new perspectives. I'm reminded of Swami Vivekananda's one statement. Religion is not in the intellectual argumentation, it is in being and becoming. So, certainly a practical way to look at this is very, very fruitful. I have often heard from my own children too, or grown-up children, maybe we should not talk as much about religion, but we should talk about spirituality. I don't know if maybe a subtle difference, but when I look at the whole gamut, there seems to be the entire answer set is in front of us. What's a reasonable package? I'm wondering, is it a matter of years, decades, for somebody to get this perspective and to teach? And what stage do we do it? When do we start? Is it like a lifelong process while actually having a day-to-day process for the teenagers or for schooling? It's just mind-boggling to see the scope of this. How do you really make it as the premise of our institution today? The modern day children / adults do not have the time for deeper study. We want bite-sized, very practical education. How do we reconcile all this? It's just mind-boggling to me. Any comments would be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked that. I think the first step is making it relevant, right? It needs to be relevant to their life. And if it's not relevant to their life, you can't even make any progress, right? So even whether you have young kids or older kids, kids in their 30s and 40s, if Hinduism cannot be applied in their life in a practical way which they can actually use, right? So when I was growing up, I used to be teased all the time because I couldn't concentrate. My dad would tease me for not being able to concentrate. I go to school, my teacher would say, hey, Dandapani, concentrate on your homework. Concentrate on eating your food. But you know what? Nobody ever taught me how to concentrate. They told me to concentrate, but they never taught me how to do it. It's like me going up to someone and say, hey, play the piano. But they don't know how to play the piano. Hey, play the piano. Is that fair? How many of you tell your kids to focus? Do you teach them how to focus? Have you taught them? You haven't, right? So how can you tell somebody to do something when you don't teach them how to do it, right? So it wasn't until I met my guru who taught that the sixth step in Raja Yoga is dharana, concentration. So he said, you need to concentrate. He asked me, do you know how to concentrate? I said, I don't. Nobody ever taught me. So this is how you concentrate. This is how you learn it. And now in order to be good at concentration, what do I need to do? I need to practice it, right? If I want to be a good piano player, I need to practice. If I want to play piano for Juilliard, I might have to practice 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. But if I want to play for my grandmother, then maybe I need to practice half an hour a week. So the more I practice concentration, the better I become at it, right? Now I can take that concentration I learn, apply it to my work, apply it to playing sports, apply it to all the different things I do. Now Hinduism has become practical and relevant in my life. Now I want to learn more, right? It's only when it's not relevant and practical in your life do you not want it. And the way Hinduism is taught to all Hindus, it's taught in a way that's not relevant. We tell stories, right? We tell this, we tell that. There's so many gods, they have so many wives. And then you have an affair and people get upset with you. You're like, why? Gods are having so many wives. Politician has an affair, and you go like, look at him, dirty guy having an affair. What's wrong with having an affair? Our gods have 50 wives, right? There's so many children, that's all they do. Every story, the gods, this is one wife, this is another wife. And then you go, it's just not relevant in our life, and that's why we don't tend to it. Our children look at it and go like, this doesn't help me, this doesn't help me become a better programmer, this doesn't help me create a successful company. But whereas if you look at other teachings of Hinduism, teaching you concentration, teaching you about the mind, teaching you about the subconscious and how you can reprogram your subconscious to create positive patterns to move forward. How do you deal with past unresolved emotional experiences sitting in your subconscious? Hinduism has a beautiful tool called the Vasanadaha Tantra that teaches you how to work with unresolved emotional experiences in your subconscious. so you don't have to carry baggages through your life. Hinduism's filled with it from the Vedas. Yeah, we don't teach our kids this stuff. Right? So I would say that's the first step, right? And as soon as you start finding a tool is useful, you will want more of it. But unless you find that, they're never going to get that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say that's the starting place. And when do you start? You ask that? Right at the start. As soon as your child is inside of you, that's when you start. Actually, Hinduism even teaches you to start before that, because Hinduism is the only religion that teaches you a way to bring the soul you want from the inner world into the womb. That you can do work beforehand so that you can put in your order, the same way you put in your order for food, you can put in an order for a soul, and you say, I want a high-minded soul to be born, and then you do your sadhana, you go on pilgrimage, and then you spend time with your wife or husband in the hotel room or your home, and then you bring through a soul. Well, how advanced is our religion? Right? And when you teach it that way, then it becomes relevant.
Awesome presentation. Thank you so much. A lot of great clarity. I had a very quick question regarding the fourth point, karma, which you talked about, the core beliefs.
Yes.
If you take a look at from the latest developments in science, especially from the great known entities like Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton of the world, today they talk about combining the concepts behind neuroscience, epigenetics, neuroimmunology, all those things.
Yeah.
They are talking about our practical ability to tap into those energies, to go beyond cause and effect, to developing the ability to causing an effect. So what they are, this goes back to the infamous debate of free will versus determinism. As free will versus determinism.
Yes.
So my curiosity was, in our Vedas, based on what you're saying, do they have any connotations, any correlations with respect to possessing such supernatural abilities by virtue of the dharana and dhyana?
Yeah.
To see that they talk about any comments.
Ask the question again, please, so I clearly understand.
Simply, if I simplify the question,
Yeah.
our Vedas, do they talk anything at all about free will
Yes.
versus determinism? That's it.
Yes, very good. Thank you for putting it so clearly. It does, because there's three aspects to karma, right? There's three types of karma. I'll give you a simple analogy. If I'm going on a vacation, right, I'll take my clothes with me, right? I pack a suitcase full of clothes and I go on vacation. Do I take all my clothes? No, I just take what I need, and I take depending on where I'm going. So if I'm going to Tulum to lay on the beach in Mexico, I might take my shorts and my sunglasses and my tank top and my flip-flops and sunscreen. But if I'm going to Switzerland to go skiing, then I might take a whole different set of clothes. I take with me what I want. So as we evolve over many lives, right, and every time we reincarnate, we only bring a certain amount of our karma into this life, right? The rest of our karma, our closet of karma, still remains back in our home, so to speak, in a simplified way. So there's three types of karma. The karma which is our entire karma, all our accumulated actions. When we reincarnate, we take only a part of it and we bring into this life. And then the third karma is the things that we're creating in this life, right? So important to understand this as a basis. So a lot of times you hear priests and monks that say, oh, it's all been determined, right? When you make a statement like that, it means that you don't have free will, right? But what it actually does mean is that a lot of the things that you've done in the past are going to determine what you're going to do in this life. But at the same time, you have free will. I'll use me as an example. When I was 4 years old, I was actually born in Malaysia, and when I was growing up at 4 years old, there was a Hindu Swami from Sri Lanka that came to our home, and he came out of the blue. I don't know where he came from, he was off the street somewhere. He came to our home. My mom let him in, because that's our tradition. You let him in, you sit him down, give him some food, some water, a little dakshina, and apple, oranges, and a cloth, and you send him on his way, right? He gives you some wisdom in exchange for it. As soon as I saw him, I said, that's me. He was dressed in orange robe, he had beads and vibhuti on his forehead, and I looked at him and I said, that's me, right? That's who I am. I didn't know he was a monk. I didn't know what he was about. Then as I grew and grew it up, and then about 7, 8, 9 years old, I realized that's not really what I want. What I want in life is self-realization. The monastic path is the most efficient way to get to self-realization. So I said, I'm going to be a monk with the goal to become self-realized. So I was very strong with that at 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old. And then I hit puberty. And then I said, well, I don't want to be a monk. Look at all those beautiful girls. Right? I'm growing up, I'm a teenager, I want to play soccer, I want to play sports, I want to hang out with girls, I want to date. Why do I want to be a monk? But then I always had that in the back of my mind. And as much as I wanted to be like every other kid and go out and play sports and date and one day get married and have kids, that intensity of the karma that I must have created in my past life said, no, you're a monk. This is your path. So in my early 20s, after I graduated from university, I left everything behind and I went and joined a monastery. And I joined a very strict traditional monastery where I only spoke to my parents twice a year on the phone, no letters, no emails, never talked to any of my relatives or friends again, and lived a celibate life. When all my friends were going out there and getting jobs, working as engineers, doctors, earning money, dating, getting married, having children. So here's the combination of predetermined and free will, right? I have the choice to have gone out there and got a job as an engineer. I have a degree in electrical engineering. I could have gone and got a job as an engineer. I have the choice. But then all the work that I'd done in previous life is kind of forcing me to say, hey, this is who you are. Does that make sense? So there's a combination of your past accumulated actions that form who you are today, and if that's so strong, it will force you to, so to speak, end up just doing what you've been really working on. But at the same time, I can choose to quit. Like right now, I'm doing this, right? I can quit tomorrow and go get a job as an engineer. Or program or whatever. But my karma, because I spent so many lifetimes doing this, it makes it very difficult. I could go be an engineer, but I'd probably be very unhappy. But this makes me happy. So that's the combination of predetermination and free will. It works hand in hand, but nothing is ever predetermined. You always have choice. And that's the beautiful thing about Hinduism. You have free will. But you also have to be mindful what you've been doing for the last 500 years in your evolution. If you've been doing one thing, then it's very hard to change that course of action. Because it's accumulated patterns, habitual patterns that are formed in deeper regions of your mind and your soul that are very hard to change. And hopefully those are patterns that have been wisely thought of, right? And you've made good choice in creating those patterns. Does that make sense? Thank you. It's a really good questions. You all ask very good questions. I like that.
Maybe we can have a couple of more questions. We'll have time for a couple of more questions. This is about Puranas. Missing element for children. Life is full of good and bad, kind and violent. The violent stories of Puranas are also directed towards the ideals, Ram, Krishna, Hanuman and others. This is one comment. From my perspective, I also heard that Puranas are highly symbolic and allegorical. You cannot take the literal interpretation of Puranas. There are three kinds of languages in the Puranas: Samadhi Bhasha, Guhya Bhasha and Darshana Bhasha. So you have to be, and to interpret the Puranas, you have to really know Vedanta very well too. So most of us make a mistake in, the literal interpretation of Puranas is at the very lowest level of understanding. When you're starting out in the kindergarten, you do that, and then when you, as you grow up, you have to interpret Puranas in a highly allegorical and symbolic way, but it's consistent with, as you said, the Hindu principles. It can be done, but I think that most people stop at the lowest level. So that's one comment here, and I would like to get your comment response.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point, right? Definitely these stories have a greater, deeper meaning, but if you look at the way most people teach the Puranas, it's a very superficial level. And at that superficial level, it's not relevant to us anymore. So that's why people don't turn to Hinduism. I agree with you. If you look at the Puranas, and the three versions of it at the university level in a much more mystical way, they are sharing some deeper stories and meanings. But if you do really look at some of these stories, they're quite far out there, right? They're really out there. I mean, pick up one of these Amachita comic books and read them and read these stories. How far are they away from the life that we lead today, right? they are riddled with so many things that don't go with Hindu Dharma, right? So do we want to keep sharing the stories? Maybe they were relevant 3,000 years ago, right? But what's relevant is what your Acharya said on the video today. Hinduism, at the core of it, is the Vedas. That's what's timeless. The Puranas are not timeless. The Vedas and the Agamas, which are the word of God, right, that have been intuitively brought through by rishis, verbally and orally passed down for thousands of years before they were written down, that's the timeless wisdom of the Vedas, right? That's what Hinduism is all about. The Puranas are not timeless. They were relevant for a certain period of time. And unless you have someone who's sitting there and really deciphering every single story and tying it to some Vedic philosophy that can apply in your life, we need to rethink it. We're losing our Hindu youth at an exponential level, right? All of you are inspired in building the temples. Look around you. How many kids are here? I see white hat older people. Where are our children? How many kids are there, youth in DC, and why aren't they here? Why aren't they here? Right? Because there's nothing that's relevant to them that they can use. And unless we do something, and we do it in a way that they can relate to, this temple is going to be empty in 20 years. And we don't want that. Our religion is much greater than that. And I'm saying not to throw out the Puranas, I'm not saying that, but we need to look at it we need to share it in a much deeper, wiser way.
Definitely, that's one of the objectives of the center. The first problem I have with the Satyanarayana Katha, we should look at it in a much more closer fashion. Okay.
Thank you for representing the youth and being here today. Can we give her a round of applause?
So I had kind of a, structural question, but
Sure.
a lot of religions, or when you typically compare, like everyone says, a lot of religions are organized the same way. If you look at Islam, if you look at Catholicism, there's, rites of passage, there's sacraments, they all preach service. There's also a component of judgment. So a lot of the way that Catholicism or Islam or other religions preach is that God not only functions at this all-pervading level, but there's a level of judgment and determinism that is sort of predictated. So certain things are predictated to be good for you versus bad for you. So where does that level of judgment, how do you realize that judgment, or how do you assess that judgment when you're doing so much as like an individual? So a lot of these steps are for the individual. They're not go call your neighbor and then you both do it. So how do you as an individual discriminate between these are great things that my brain came up with versus what is actually real, and what if you're making the right judgments?
Okay, I think there are 2 or 3 questions in that.
Yeah.
No problem, that's okay. And I think we need to recalibrate first and set a benchmark, right? So only Hindus in the world say all religions are the same. Christians never say that. Muslims never say that. The Buddhists never say that. But Hindus, we're a very tolerant bunch of people. We don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to stir the pot. That's our nature. So we say all religions are the same. You walk into a Hindu temple, you'll see a cross, the Torah, a little symbol that shows everyone's the same. But you walk into a church, you never see an Om. You walk to a synagogue or to a Buddhist temple or to a mosque, you never see symbols of other religion. We're the only people that say all religions are the same. And this is a great mistake. All religions are not the same. And this is very important to understand. All religions are the same at the surface level. At the surface level, all religions teach you to be kind, to be gentle, to be loving, compassionate, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that, right? Or do this, do that. Once you go deeper, all religions contradict each other in a great way. You have the Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, they all believe in one God, right? One God, so that's great, it's similar to Hinduism. Then you have the Eastern religions of, Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism. Hinduism believes in one God. Buddhists don't believe in God. So now all of a sudden Buddhism contradicts the Abrahamic religion and Hinduism. Buddhists don't believe in God, Hindus believe in one God, and the Abrahamic religions believe in one God. Now the Abrahamic religions believe in reincarnation and karma. The Abrahamic religions do not believe in reincarnation and karma. But Hindus believe in reincarnation and karma. Now automatically you have a huge contradiction, right? Between Hinduism, Buddhism, and the Abrahamic religions. Abrahamic religions believe in an entity that's purely evil, Satan, right? Hinduism doesn't believe in that. We believe that God is all-pervasive. And because God is all-pervasive, there cannot be an entity that's purely evil, because God's in everything. How can there be something that's purely evil? So now the religions contradict each other. So you cannot, in asking a question, we need to be specific what religion we're talking about, right? So the Abrahamic religions have the sense of judgment, right? You have one life. At the end of the life, there's a judgment day. And this is a very generic overview. Obviously, each religion, Christianity has so many denominations, and same with Judaism and Islam and stuff. So at the end of that life, there's judgment day, and you can go to heaven and hell. Whereas Hinduism does not have judgment. Hinduism has free will. So God has created the law of karma, which is the universal self-governing law. Right? In Hinduism, there are no rules, there are guidelines. Right? You know a lot of Hindus. Most of the Hindus you know probably enjoy eating meat, right? They love a good chicken curry, good fish curry, right? Yet Hinduism teaches non-violence. Don't kill animals, don't do that. But it's not a rule, it's a guideline, right? So Hinduism has guidelines, there's no judgment. The law of karma has been placed, so you have free will to do whatever you want. So if I want to take a gun and shoot somebody tomorrow, I can do that. It suggests you don't, right, as a guideline, ahimsa, but I can. Then I have to face the repercussion of my action. I will either be punished by the law if I'm caught, and if I'm not, then the karma goes out and will come back to me, right? So Hinduism does not have the concept of judgment, whereas it has the law of karma, a universal self-governing law, where the repercussions of your actions, whether positive or negative, will either come back in this life or some future life where hopefully you will learn from that, apply it in your life, and start to make process evolution. And Hinduism is also twofold. You have individuality, where you as a person are growing, and then you have a sangha, a community, right? Where you gather together, like all of you here, you learn from one another and you grow. The concept in Hinduism is that the group helps the individual, and the individual helps the group. There's two parts in Hinduism. One is you're making your own personal journey and a growth, but then you're also making a difference as a community, and you gather together, where the group helps the individual and the individual helps the group. Because we cannot do it alone. We need each other to go forward, right? Nobody even does it alone. Even monks cannot do it alone. Because there was no Grihastha, there'd be no monks. Where would the monks come from? Right? From the Grihastha. So we're codependent on each other. So if any monk comes and tells you, yeah, I don't need anybody or anything, that's BS. That's not true. Everybody needs everybody else. We need the planet, and we need people around us. Right? And we need to take care of us, and we need that community. That is so important. That's the Sangha, right, in Hinduism.
So first of all, I want to say thank you. You have an astonishing and interesting story. It leads to a logical question about if the Puranas as they are represented,
Yes.
and as they're understood at this very basic level, are no longer relevant, or have only limited relevance unless you have knowledge, then why aren't we writing today's stories already? Why, we see young people who have chosen paths, whether they are in paths of service or in paths of non-profit organizations or in success, but with great wisdom and great thought and spirituality. It feels like we should start writing those stories, because they become the stories that others can follow. Because whether you're young or you're old, you need examples. You need pathways to be defined with goals, as you said, but also you need stories that show that it's achievable. And we should be trying to find these people. We meet them, we know them, but how can we talk about them, write their stories in a way that they're relevant to today's Hinduism? That would be my request to you.
That was a beautiful speech. Thank you. Was there a question in there? No.
We need help to do it.
You're so right, right? You're so right. Look at the Hindus around the world. Who's running Google? Right? Who are running some of these top companies around the world? Amazing Hindus around the world that have created amazing businesses or running businesses that have achieved great art, music, talents in so many different areas. You know, 5 minutes after walking into this temple, maybe 10 minutes after walking into this temple, I turned to my wife and I said to her, you know what? I said to her, this temple have really strong women. Have really strong, smart women. That's what I said. You can feel the Shakti when you walk in here. Not from the shrine, but from these women. That's what I felt. I turned to my wife, this temple has strong women, strong, wise women. They come up to you and they're standing strong. Why aren't they, right? Why aren't we writing their stories? Right? Why aren't we telling about them? Right? These women that are leaders, that are so articulate, right? I'm not sure what your name is. What's your name? Charu. Charu, when she was speaking to me, I was thinking, while she was talking, I wasn't concentrating, I'll be honest. I was thinking to myself, I was going, how articulate is she? She's so clear, she's so articulate, and she's so precise. Who started the teaching in this school, in this temple? What's her name? Rukmani Amma. Why, Rukmani Mami, sorry. Why aren't we telling her story? As this dynamic woman that came to the West, right? Who's here today when our youth are not here, started education because she has the vision to see into the future of futures, to care about our future children, our unborn generations, to start education that she may not be alive to see flourishing. Why do we need to tell about some god that's sleeping with another god and then chopping off another god's head? When we have beautiful examples here, men and women that are setting examples, why aren't we telling their stories? When I see these ladies that are strong and wise and clear in their thought, what great role models for our daughters, right? For the young women that are growing up in America, what great models for them, right? Why can't they all grow up this way, right? That women are strong. Hinduism is the only religion in the world that worships God as a woman. Every other religion, God's referred to as man. He, who is our Father in heaven. They don't say she, who is our mother in heaven. Right? Hinduism, we have a sect, Shaktism, where God is woman. Right? Why don't we teach that? Because every man and woman are the same. They're not different. Why are men and women the same? Because the core belief of Hinduism is one God, and we believe God is in everything. If God is in me and you, then there's no difference. There's no Brahmin, there's no caste. We're all God. Even the dog poop on the sidewalk is God. You can't say that's dirty, so God's not in there. Right? Why don't we tell their stories? So their stories are relevant today, and our young daughters growing up can read their stories and go, wow, when I grow up, I want to be like Rukmani Amma. I want to create an education center that can change lives for generations to come. I want to have that kind of vision, right? How old are you, Amma? 90? 93, amazing. 93 years old, and she's here today, turning up, right?
The youngest volunteer that we have.
The youngest volunteer, right? 93 years old, she's turning up. She's not talking, she's doing, right? That's the big difference, right? Everybody talks. We have inner people talking, right? Talking heads. Amma's here, 93 years old. She's turning up. She's doing the work. Why don't she be the role? What a great story. She should be on TED Talks, right? Telling her story. Why don't we tell her story of modern Hindus teaching relevant things, being great role models? We all need role models, right? We have them here. All of you, you talked about standing on the shoulders of giants, people that built this temple. How much pain and heartache and arguments and fights and tears and laughter that you took to get together.
There's Dr. Shiva at the back, I think he was one of the founders of the temple. So.
Yeah, why aren't we telling his story and the stories of other gentlemen that and sitting
many giants at the back, sitting in the back.
Yeah. All these people that are sitting there quietly, why don't we tell their stories? But not only their stories, right? The story is not so important, but what is the purpose behind the story, right? What are their values? What are their qualities? What makes Rukmani Amma get up every morning and still be driven to do this at 93 years old? That's what we want to learn. The story itself is not so relevant, right? But that part of it we want to know. Tell those stories. Do that. The Puranas are great, right? They're wonderful stories, but they're not so relevant, you know? We have greater stories to write, so write them and tell them. Yeah. Thank you for bringing out that point. It's a really good point.
It's a great thought. We have to write our own Puranas for today. I think you've given the suggestions and the guidance for that one. Yeah. So we'll do that. So I think I'd like to wrap this up. There's the last questions that came earlier. For those who do not become monks, how can they progress to the same way as we did as a monk?
Yes, those who do not become monks, how can they progress in the same way if you're a grihasta? Hinduism outlines clear path, right? Whether you're a grihasta or monastic. If you're a monastic, it's just a more extreme path that you have chosen, right? It's almost saying that Rafael Nadal wants to win the Wimbledon, so he takes a very extreme path of training in order to win the Wimbledon. That doesn't mean everybody else cannot play tennis, right? We can still play tennis and enjoy it. So the Grihasta path is a less extreme path, but there's also a clearly outlined path within Hinduism on how to make spiritual progress. So Hinduism has two clearly outlined paths, the path of the monastic and the path of the householder. The householder is the Grihasta path. In both those paths, Hinduism has outlined steps to getting to spiritual enlightenment or self-realization. So we just need to understand what the path is and then follow those steps. And you know, in the overview of the householder path is Artha, Dharma, Artha, Karma, Dharma, Moksha, right? Karma, Moksha, and that's the path. But then it breaks it down into clear, actionable items that we can apply in our life. So you don't have to be a monastic to make progress on the spiritual path. You still can, you just need to know what to do. And you need to know the process and the goal.
I just started saying that thank you for coming here. I'm really honored to see you face to face. The thing remaining is to take a selfie.
I love selfies.
I don't take selfies at all. Just going back to the previous discussion, I want to say that we are writing. Our writing is different. It is through the PowerPoint, through the videos. In YouTube, I watch at least one video every day of yours. Just to let you know. Even yesterday, I watched 2 of them. I just wanted to ask one thing, which is a practical thing for the normal people, for the normal life, is how do you define success?
Yes.
I heard from different spiritual leaders, also successful people, they need to be more joyful and show their happiness to the world to make the youth strive for that success. But I think success, the way we define, is the external recognition of our getting some material advantage over others. But personally, from your inner core, how do you define success?
Yes. For me, I would define success is living a life that's in alignment with your purpose, right? What is your purpose in life? Most people can't answer that question. When you go to the bathroom, you have a purpose, right? You never walk into the bathroom and go, I'm not sure why I'm here. When you get in the car to drive somewhere, you have a purpose. When was the last time you got in the car and drove around endlessly? Probably never, right? So I'm going to go for a drive today. I think I'll go down the I-95 for 2 hours. Then I think I'll take this exit. Why? I don't know. It feels good. Do you do that? No. Most things you do in life has a clear purpose, right? All the mundane things has a clear purpose. So if I was to ask you this question, what is your purpose in life? Can you give me a simple one-line answer? If I asked you, what is the color of your t-shirt? You'd probably say turquoise or green, right? But if I asked you, what's your purpose in life? Can you give me a simple one-line answer? Most people have no idea what their purpose in life. And because they don't know their purpose in life, they don't know what to do. And they feel unsuccessful. For me, success is living a life of purpose. If you ask most people what do they want in life, what do they say? They want to be happy, right? Happiness should never be pursued. Never pursue happiness. Pursue a lifestyle where the byproduct of that lifestyle gives you happiness. If I travel with my wife or have a glass of wine with my wife or a lovely dinner with my wife, the byproduct of that is happiness, right? So pursue a lifestyle and where the byproduct of the lifestyle results in happiness. In order to pursue that lifestyle, we need to know our purpose. What is our purpose in life? What is our goal in life? What is the path to get to that goal? And then once we start living that path, that lifestyle that keeps us on the path to that goal, the byproduct of that is happiness and success. All right? That to me is what success is. It's not how much material we have or how much money we have, or, what we've accomplished in life, but it's rather living a life of purpose. Right?